How about instead of acquiring more knowledge, we learn to eliminate our defects? Ladies and gentlemen of the winning team, hear me out because I have been thinking a lot about a lot of things. Shock, that's literally all I do. If I could get paid for thinking, I would be so freaking filthy rich. Oh my gosh, I'd be the richest person on the planet. Anyway, so I've been thinking a lot about the defects of humanity, of humans, because we're defective, right? And the reason why I say that specifically is because I feel like one of the biggest things I've learned, those of you who know that we spent a good 2 years studying Adam and Eve, the results of Adam and Eve and all that, is that we have a lot of things about us as humans that we are unaware of that are affecting every single thing that we do. And trauma is just one of them, but it's not all of them. And I only mention that as an example and one that I think people would assume I'm talking about, but there are many others. And I realized that what we actually need to do in society, rather than acquiring knowledge, right, which is exactly what Adam and Eve did in the garden, right? They thought, oh, in order to succeed, in order to whatever, I'm going to acquire knowledge, right? As opposed to acquiring knowledge, they needed to remove their defect, right? And what was the defect that they had? The defect that Adam and Eve presented, which is the defect in which we all have, is that they somehow believed that in their own understanding and in their own strength, in their self as a human, that they were going to be able to figure out how to live life well by themselves without God. That was their defect, right? But we as humans have multiple defects. And I find that so often people are so busy seeking out knowledge as like a way to like improve their life or to like gain intelligence or to they want to pursue. And I've always said that I don't seek knowledge, I seek wisdom. And I've dedicated myself to seeking wisdom because knowledge is only as good as you can apply it, and wisdom is the application of knowledge. And there's a lot of knowledgeable people who have died with all that knowledge that they have, and it's amounted to nothing. I say this all the time, like being a scientist, it really dawned on me, like doing my own research project, like any of you guys don't know about my research. I keep talking about it like I did like a full-blown like PhD level research. I didn't do a full-blown PhD level, but I did do a year of research from my undergrad. Anyway, I've got a video on that if you want to hear about it, and I show you about it and all of that. So I really enjoyed it. But anyway, what I learned from that experience was that I spent a whole entire year, right, on one question, on one topic, on one theory, right? And there's an infinite number of questions in the universe. So I just started to think to myself, like, and I already knew this, but it just studying there and hearing from being in the community of scientists, people who build their life on science, and being the only person, probably the only person there who's there despite being completely sold out to the Lord, like, if that makes sense. I find it fascinating that people would find any logic in dedicating yourself to the pursuit of something that is infinite, which is knowledge. As in, I spent 1 year on a project, and the conclusion of the project, and this is even what my literal like professors said to me. They were like, by the way, the best way you're going to score well is to basically say, to critique your work and show how much work you were not able to do and why your results are nowhere near as accurate as they could have been, because there's so many other things that you could have done. So I've spent a whole year doing that, and I'm also now going to basically say at the end, yes, my work also matched the current data of the other scientists in the world, which is I'm very proud of. But I also had to critique that. But there's a whole bunch of other things. And then so that's where there's a whole section where you do future work. Like, what would you do if you had more time to work on this? And that's why a lot of scientists will fixate on one thing that they'll study all the way through into the end of their life. I know what it's like because I'm a scientist by my the way that I think. I just think in science. It's like science is like my hobby. It's not even my hobby. It's like my personality. It's hard to explain because it's not something that I do. It's just something that I am, you know? And so that happens with me. This is why I'm always thinking, because I'm obsessing over an idea, and I can't obsess until I come to a conclusion. And that's why I spent 2 years studying Adam and Eve, because I was like, I need to get to where did it all start going wrong, and why, and what was it about, what happened, and you know. And if I didn't have the Lord, I would lose my mind, like a lot of other scientists do, where they just obsess over one thing. And then, like, you know, the rumor that Pythagoras killed himself because there wasn't a square root of 2 and all of that kind of thing. Yeah, I would get lost there as well. And I do get lost there. A lot of the time I'm lost completely in the studying. And then the Lord has to be like, don't forget that you're never going to actually know everything. FYI. And I've started to actually also find people, and this is what made me to think about this as a defective quality about us as humanity, as humans, like the obsession of the pursuit of knowledge, right? because knowledge is only valuable when it's applicable. There's a lot, and like I said, there's a lot of people that know a lot, and a lot of people that come against me, especially as a believer of the Lord. Their argument a lot of the time is some kind of research in some kind of corner of somewhere that they've found, right? About whatever happened in the long lost scrolls of wherever, all of these things. And I honestly believe, I've said this before, I really think that if you're really overly nitpicking at the work of the Lord this much, you clearly have a problem with him, because how many people go to a university and study a degree with people who are just people who are telling you stuff, who were told by other people who just told them stuff, who were schooled by reading textbooks that are written by other people. They're all just written by people, but you're not critiquing or criticizing or scrutinizing what those people are telling you. But when it's God, you're like, well, I heard that there was this one verse in Haggai chapter 3 verse 7 that wasn't already in the original Hebrew. And it's just like, dude, you just have problems with God. Just talk to the Lord. It's fine. Because like, you know what I'm saying? But I think, again, it's like a place of safety in delusion and in defectiveness of, I'm going to keep pursuing this thing because I feel like, because I'm acquiring something and there's like a measurable level of progression, like I can measure my progression. You guys know that that's my whole thing. Like winning's tip is you've always got to be measuring your rate of progression. Your rate of progression must always increase. Your rate of progression doesn't have to match anybody else. That's why I say just your rate of progression. Everybody's amount of progression over time is different, but measure your own rate of progression. Okay. So I'm comfortable with myself as long as my rate of progression is always increasing. And that rate of progression also includes times of rest. And actually the Lord always speaks to me the most when I'm resting. That's why I believe the Lord tells us to rest, because that's when all of our walls are down. These lot should have invited me for real. Like, it's a thing where, oh my gosh, and it's those neighbors that I love as well. I'm just going to go there. I'm just going to show up. I'm just going to go buy some drinks and show up. I'm not going to do that, but I've thought about it. And I'm confident that they would actually love it. Anyways, I digress. Rate of progression. But anyway, so I'm just like, look, gaining knowledge is not increasing your rate of progression in life. Gaining knowledge is as good as gaining knowledge, like people who just gain lots of information. It's as good as these. Oh, that's my speaker. Randomly gaining all this knowledge, right, is just as defective as these women on social media who are buying like 100 Stanley cups or whatever they're called. It's not. None of that's going to, like, none of that is, do you know what I'm saying? Like, none of that is adding any sense of value to your life and the lives of the people around you or the world at large. So it's just silly. And this is what I'm saying. It's defective. That's why I think we as humans... Oh, gosh. I had to close the window. Anyway, those things are not adding value in like what you're doing right now. And this is what I'm saying. Like I've been thinking so much about this whole defective thing. Like some people will have certain boundaries and barriers up based on like their past experiences, based on things that they've seen and whatever. And those things are also creating a defect, because if something is like, it's funny because it kind of reminds me of what L. Ron Hubbard talks about in his book Dianetics and Scientology. And I get in Dianetics, which I get, for those of you who've been around, you know that we read through like the majority of that on the channel, and we did loads of videos on Scientology for those of you who've been around. And one thing I appreciate about L. Ron Hubbard is he is in some senses, there is some logic to his theory about the reactive mind, in the sense of we go through things and then they affect how our decision making and our ability to make clear cut decisions. And I agree with that, because there's a lot of people that I think are intelligent, and there's a defect that's getting in the way of their effectiveness. So, for example, there's a lot of Christians right now who have so much knowledge, and it really upsets me because there's so many of them have so much more knowledge than I do. They're so much more biblically aware of a lot of things, but they'll have these defects. The defect might be they're prideful. So their pride doesn't allow them to put them in places or spaces where they're prepared to be critiqued on the things they're not correct about, or they're not prepared to acknowledge or like honor or respect somebody else who is competent in a different area than they are, right? And so that becomes a defect. They might have the defect of their current state of their relationship with God and how they're not willing to go somewhere with God. And because they're not, like, this is what I'm saying, one of the defects I feel like that exists in us and in humanity today as a whole is this whole concept of protecting people that have done bad things and expecting victims of those things to keep it quiet. And the reason why I say that, because I've been thinking about it a lot, especially because I look at a lot of stories about people who've been going through that kind of stuff, because I try to be a voice for the voiceless, because there's a lot of voiceless people out there, in particular the children, and thus why I care so much about them, because they are the most voiceless, because they won't really find their voice until later in life. That's why, again, it's the devil's greatest work: destroy you as a child, give you the most possible seeds of distraction and disorder and chaos, so that it can grow while you're a child and you don't know any different and you're ignorant to it all. Then when you're an adult, you'll be hit with the reality of the world, the reality of everything that's happened, and you'll just spend the rest of your life being completely ineffective because you're distracted dealing with everything that you've been through. It's the greatest thing that the devil does. It's the smartest strategy. He can't kill us anymore because Jesus defeated death, so his only thing to do now is just to make us ineffective. And how does he do that? By making us defective. He makes us as defective as possible. And that's essentially what all of the things of this world end up making us do, because we then compromise. And when we compromise, it's a defect, right? You'll be happy to say, I don't know. Can't even think of a specific example, and I don't want to waste the time trying to conjure one up if there's not one coming straight to my mind. Basically, what I'm trying to say here is that I'm noticing that, like, even for myself, I'll give you guys an example of a defect that I've noticed in others, because people will say things to me about myself, and I'm like, but you could easily do the same thing. Like, people say, you're really, I don't know, you're really intelligent. I'm like, okay. There's like actionable steps that I have taken that you are not choosing to take, that you could choose to take, and they are defective, i.e. you only listen to the voices of people that agree with you. You don't have the ability to sit and have a respectful debate and conversation with somebody that fundamentally disagrees with everything that you've said, or even fundamentally disagrees with the way you carry yourself, the way that you speak, what you think, what you believe. You do not hold the ability to do that. That's a defect that you have, because that's something that I think is, again, a lost art in society. If we could all, with so many of the issues that we have, sit and have respectful conversations. That's why I find talking to people insufferable a lot of the time, because like all we do is agree about everything. And I'm like, I want somebody to like give me like something that I really disagree with, and then like let's like get into the nitty gritties of it, and like let's delve in, and you can explain why you think the way you think, and I'll explain why I think the way I think. Like I was just saying in a previous video, I pay attention to everything that's going on all around in the world. I pay attention to everything. I listen to the devil's side of the story, and I look at what the devil's got doing in his kingdom. I look at what's going on in the kingdom of God. I look at what's happening in every industry. I look at what's happening with every age group, every race, everything. As much of any other perspective experience I can possibly have, as many different people's shoes I can try to put myself in, I do it. And that's how I learn a lot of stuff that other people don't learn, because a lot of people, they're a skewed viewpoint because of only being, for example, only hanging around with people that agree with everything they say, only being around people that look exactly like them, all of those types of things. And it creates defects, because now you don't actually know, because you've never put yourself in the position. And it's just the little things like that. You see what I'm saying? Being overly sensitive. Like, again, communication is a very hard, difficult art, because there are so many different languages, so many different connotations, so many different cultural nuances, different this, that, and the other that happens amongst people. So the fact that people take what somebody says so offensively is defective in and of itself, because you don't know what's normal for them and what's not normal for other people. So, for example, I'll give you guys a perfect example. This girl, Tyler, gets famous, right? Tyler, the one who sings, all these songs, a lot of them really famous, whatever, right? So she gets really famous, and she's telling people that she calls herself colored, right? Now, again, me, who is, originally from the south side of Africa myself, well aware that this is not a big deal. This is what people do over there, and that's how the word is used. It's not a big kerfuffle. It's not a big deal. No one would class that as racist. It will be normal. And in places like South Africa, where there is white South Africans, all the whitest South African down to the blackest South African, to all the different, you've got the South Africans from the Indian, Asian heritages and all sorts. South Africa's got a lot of different communities, right? Now, that is a normal thing. But in the Western society, particularly more so in places like even the United States, that's an even more that's such an offensive word. Although people of color, to me, it sounds the same. And this is why I'm just like, society is actually ridiculous and very weak, to be honest, because people of color to me is weird. And I don't like to use that phrase POC as a POC, like it's weird. Right? I don't like the POC, because then it makes it like it's like whites versus everybody else, and it's just weird. I just think it's just like, just not, you know what I mean? But anyway, I digress. And so this colored word, you see what I'm saying? So you could be offended in communication based on your own connotations of the word, the use of the word colored, and your own interpretation, your own experiences. And that isn't the fault of the other person. Do you see what I'm saying? This is what I'm trying to like get across here in this video. I don't know if I'm really making sense like right now. So you get the gist of what I'm trying to say. Like, the defective nature of being so sensitive to what everybody's saying is a problem. It's a problem. And that's again what I'm saying. Acquiring knowledge is not going to help you if you still have that as a defect. Applying knowledge is not going to help you if you're still a poor communicator, right? Because if you can't, again, communicate your information in a way that people understand it, let's use another example. My favorite scientist, Gregor Mendel, right? My favorite scientist is Gregor Mendel. And the reason why is because he's a mathematician. And you guys know I love maths. Like, I absolutely love maths. I love algebra, right? So anyway, Gregor Mendel is the one who's the reason that in genetics of today, we have an understanding of alleles in genetics, and that, like, I think it's like 60 or 70 years ago. I can't believe that this is what scientists believe in. Again, another reason why I will never put my life or my trust in science, as much as I love science so much, right? That people believe that we all came out 50-50 of our parents, right? As our DNA and as our person, and 50-50 in our phenotypes or our genotypes. Phenotypes being like the things that people see, and the genotypes being like the physical genes that you would be able to see, like looking at the DNA, etc. So obviously I don't know how that was ever an accepted theory, by the way, because anybody who's had siblings before knows that that's certainly not the case. But anyway, that's what people believed. So Gregor Mendel did this experiment, I think in like his garden with peas, where he crossbred them and all this. And that's how he realized, oh, there's some dominant genes, there's recessive genes, dominant alleles, recessive alleles, boom, bada bing, bada boom. We have the genetics that we believe in today. However, he was a mathematician, so everything that he wrote was all written in mathematical language, which, as for biologists, which are the least mathematical form of all of the sciences, because I would say physics is the most mathematical. Love physics. Chemistry is probably next, and then biology. A lot of biology can be very not mathematical, although it is very mathematical really as well in a lot of areas anyway. So people didn't really understand what all of this hullabaloo was about, right? Turns out the man has made a huge scientific discovery anyway. And what am I saying? Communication, defectiveness, whatever. His work, as valuable as it was useless in a sense if no one had found his work. And I think somebody found his like old books after he died and was able to figure out what it was, right? If no one had found that out, right, after the fact, his work and his knowledge would have been as good as nothing. And that's what I'm trying to say here, that knowledge, as great as it is, as it's a tool that leads us into wisdom, right? Knowledge and wisdom must work together, is completely useless if we have defects that are preventing it from being had. And trauma is a huge defect. I'm going to talk about trauma separately in another video, because I really think that we're giving too much attention to trauma at this moment in time, at this here juncture. But that's what I have to say. So I think instead of pursuing knowledge, address your internal defects. Like, do a lot of self-reflection. I spend a lot of time self-reflecting, like a lot. It's something that I've learned from being studying science, where everything you do is critiqued constantly, which I love. And then also working, like being a dancer, like again, everything you do is being critiqued. You're looking at your body constantly in the mirror from all angles and assessing every single part of it. And I've learned that from those things, I've gained the habit of just always like, what do I need to improve? What's going, you know what I mean? Self-reflection, because sometimes, again, it could just be like your delivery. A lot of the time could be your delivery. It could be your approach. You could be boxing yourself in. Like you could have the answer to the very things that you're praying to the Lord for. And the reason why you don't have them is because your defective closed-mindedness. because you only can visualize something happening in a certain way. And I see this a lot of times happening with parents in the job that I do. Obviously, I teach maths and science. And for the parents, I see it all the time with the parents. They are obsessed that there's only one route that their child, even if we're all talking about going to become a doctor, I could tell you guys probably about 4 or 5 routes that you can take, maybe more, to going into medical school. If you ask any parent, they can only visualize one method to going to medical school. And when I try to explain to them, I recommend you do this. You can still go to the same Ivy League, or what's the UK equivalent of that is Russell Group, like universities, right? You can do the same like medical school courses and whatever, but you can follow this route and you can follow this route and you can follow this route. And honestly, some of these routes are better for the circumstances based on X, Y, and Z, but they'll be so hell-bent on this is the route that we have to take. Then, you know what they do? They take that route anyway with the kids. So I get sick and tired of parents at this point. They take that route anyway, even though I've clearly laid out, sent them all the information and everything, and gone out of my way to email them literally how to apply for everything. But anyway, and then they go and do what the other route. It doesn't quite work out. They panic, and then we end up having wasted 3 years because whatever happened, that we could have just done this 3 years sooner. And this is again what I'm saying about wisdom, because with wisdom you buy time. We seek wisdom, buy time. That's how I look at it. So I'd rather have wisdom, because if I have wisdom, then I can make a decision today. Why would I wait? You know what horrifies me the most, and this is why I keep close to the Lord. What horrifies me is when I always hear people older saying, now that I'm older, if I'd known this when I was younger. And I'm like, every time I hear a older person say that, I'm like, I'm taking notes. I'm not wasting my 20s to figure out then in my 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s that, if I'd known sooner. Oh, no. The whole Bible is there. The whole Lord is there. The Holy Spirit dwells within me. I can have wisdom today. You know what I'm saying? But then the only thing that's going to stop that is my own defectiveness, my own closed-mindedness. Like I'm saying with these parents a lot of the time. I'm trying to tell these parents here, you know that your child can do a paid PhD. What do you mean they can do a paid PhD? Oh, well, after you do a bachelor's, people don't know this. This is worldwide, by the way, guys, because I checked on this website I'm about to tell you guys about. I check it all the time myself to see if there's ever a PhD that I fancy doing, right? You can do an undergraduate degree, and then you could do a paid PhD. And what I mean by a paid PhD is the PhD gets paid for you. So you don't have to pay the cost of doing a 3 to 4 year PhD. They pay you as well, and you do the PhD. So then I'm battling with people who are here like, but we have to the PhD I need to save for a master's. Do you know that so many of these paid PhDs, is literally the website's like findaphd.org. Go and check if you think I'm lying. Go and check now. And it does across all subjects. Go and check right now. All subjects around the world. You findaphd.org, as I believe it is. It's something close to that. You can literally go straight from a bachelor's, skip the however much you would save. So people are out here spending a whole year saving or 2 years saving to go back to do a master's so that they can then go to do a PhD. When some of these paid PhDs, if you can present yourself well enough and get enough endorsements from the university that you came from, they're going to allow you skip the master's degree, which in this country costs them more to then doing, an undergraduate like per year. Obviously, it's a more intense course. Then you can go straight to doing a PhD, and the PhD is paid for, and it's like, and so so you ask yourself, why would people not do that? But they don't, because they're closed-minded. And this is what I'm trying to say. Address your defects before you seek more knowledge. Sometimes there's defective natures in you and defective things about you that are causing you to have issues. And I'm having to do this with myself right now, because there's some defects that I've addressed within myself that I'm addressing with the Lord, because I'm recognizing that there are some things that I'm getting in the way of myself in, and it's not anything else. No more acquiring of knowledge is going to help. What's going to help is me actually just sitting there and going, oh, you know what? I'm the problem in this, because I need to just address this. So anyways, that is my little bit of hopefully helpful information for you guys. If life's a game, it's play to win. God bless every single one of you. God loves you. I love you. And I'll see you in my next one.